You know, in my industry, just maybe just one addition. So I worked 15 years on the human pharma side, so in human pharmaceuticals, and now since 11 years I'm in the same company but working in the animal health division.
Okay.
So it looks like the missing spring finally arrived. Yeah, so it's already end of May and we haven't had a spring this year. So.
That's great. That's so great because all these terms excites me because I'm from engineering background, right? So this is the first time I'm having someone outside of engineering background in my show. And so I'm actually so excited to have you in my show today.
You know, the basic thing also from the very beginning is a pharmaceutical drug. Is it for human? Is it for an animal? Always has
Okay.
to, as you just said, fulfill a need.
Hi everyone, welcome to my episode 8 of the Innovators Minute. Today we have a very special guest from Germany, Dr.Juergen. Unlike all my previous recordings, I have Dr.Juergen from the pharmaceutical industry. So it's going to be very exciting recording section with him because he's going to share with us more on the innovation process in the pharmaceutical industry. So it's not like a typical innovation processes, I would say, because it takes very much longer time in the pharmaceutical industry. Typically, it's about 8 to 10 years in order to commercialize a product from scratch. But what we can see is that they have the major breakthrough during the vaccination development, where they only need about 6 months. So this is where Dr. Eugene will be sharing with us on the innovation processes and what are the challenges they face. It could be a very typical innovation process like any other industry, but the challenges are a bit slightly different. So let's hear and get to know more about him and the industry innovation process through my podcast. Okay.
Sorry, I have to accept.
Hi,
Yeah.
hi Eugene. Yeah, start.
Hi, a wonderful good morning from Germany. Hi, Visha.
Hi Eugene. It's good evening here from Malaysia.
Yeah, and it's in the middle of the morning here in Germany. Unfortunately, it looks like the missing spring finally arrived. Yeah, so it's already end of May and we haven't had a spring this year. So
Wow.
it's always cold, rainy. But for the weekend, at least 20 degrees are announced. That would be lovely.
Oh, that's nice. That's really nice to hear. I mean, but Malaysia only have like 2 seasons. We don't have like 4 seasons like Germany, right? So that's nice weather.
I will not complain about the global warming, but to be honest, it seems also we have not four equal ones, but a long winter and a long summer, and spring and autumn is all of a sudden very short. So that's my impression over the last year.
Okay. So tell me more about yourself. I just love to know about you and what you do and how did your passion grew in STEM. So tell me more about yourself.
Yeah, so what can I tell you? Where should I start? Okay, let's say this way. I'm 59 and working since, what is it now, 26 years in the pharmaceutical industry.
Okay.
I would. I started originally, funny enough, dental medicine, yeah, just for a year,
Okay.
and then I realized it's not my cup of tea because it's very, more like a handcraftman, yeah. It's not. It's so, and I'm a from my motor skills, I realized it's not so my thing, and then I moved to something which I wanted to do originally, which is nutritional science. So I started to study nutritional science, and in Germany we have two different ways. One is combined with economics, and
Okay.
one is much more into biochemistry medicine. And I went into the biochemistry medicine part because that was my chemistry was always my favorite topic also at
Okay.
school. And so I did that and finished with my thesis in pharmacology and toxicology of nutrition. And then I had a chance, and so then you will see where the industry already came into my life very early on, because there was a small pharmaceutical company in Germany who wanted to develop a new pharmaceutical, and they needed someone to support their phase 1 study. Yeah, so and the preclinical study, and so I was part of the preclinical study. So my first contact with the pharmaceutical industry, and then I continued because it was such an interesting topic and there was much more to do. So I did my PhD in the same subject. So and after I finished, I fulfilled my dream. So I started in the pharmaceutical industry. So when I started working, that was the time when the generics popped up first time. You know, the pharmaceutical products, which were the Me Too after the patents were expired. And I started in the biggest company in Germany at that time, and which in the meantime belongs to the Israel Tiva company. And from there, I moved into the research-driven industry after 2.5 years, and I'm still in the same company. So it's a German global player, 51,000 employees, called Boehringer Ingelheim, and the headquarters is in Ingelheim, and I'm working and living there. So that's in a nutshell my story.
That's great. That's so great because all these terms excites me because I'm from engineering background, right? So this is the first time I'm having someone outside of engineering background in my show. And so I'm actually so excited to have you in my show today. But it's a lot of things that I'm learning. It's a lot of terms that it's very technical and it's also new to me. So okay, so tell me about this. You were doing your PhD, right? So when you were doing your PhD, I know it's a bit of very academic research, and then now that you're working in industry, so what is the difference or the gap that you actually notice based on experience? Because you have conducted your research being in the academic side, and now that you're working in an industry but you're still a researcher yourself, so what is the gap that you're actually noticing over here, and do you think there's any way that we can work out to close the gap in your industry particularly?
In my industry, so just maybe just one addition. So I worked 15 years on the human pharma side, so in human pharmaceuticals, and now since 11 years I'm in the same company but working in the animal health division.
Okay.
So in the end, it's a very broad spectrum about different species. So what is I think many people you would ask, after they have started work, will say the biggest gap is theory versus practice. You are the fantastic person. You can tell every chemical thing. You can tell how everything will work. But when you start in the industry, and working on products and people, that is not so much the real deal anymore. The real deal is the advanced topic. So what does it mean for you, Visha, as a patient, for the dog and the cat as a patient, and how can we improve their well-being, or how can we protect them from getting sick and so on. So the whole theory. So to be honest, my PhD never led to a new pharmaceutical. So unfortunately, I spent 4 years for the cupboard, you would say. Yeah, of course, it helped me a lot, but there's no outcome. And when you go into the industry, the nice thing about it is you always work on a success story. So that's the fantastic thing. You are no longer the theoretical person. Maybe you are just part in a long development, because keep in mind, a pharmaceutical development, is it for humans or animals, on average takes 8 to 10 years between idea and then till you bring it on the market, because of all the legal constraints and requirements. So in a nutshell, the biggest difference is really that forget about the theory, think about how you put things into action. So I think that's the major step where many people, new people, are a little bit surprised that no one asked them for their chemistry knowledge. But what is it? What is the benefit for the customer, for the physician, for the veterinarian? So that's the first big step, I think, for everyone after university.
That's a nice one. But I just caught this when you were, when you were explaining this, you were saying that this entire process actually takes 8 to 10 years for you to, from the ideation stage to bring into commercialization? Is it often, it's always been like that because you always do your, your research, it really takes about 8 to 10 years or longer for you to actually commercialize a product in industry?
If you think about a very new molecule, let's say a new model, a new class molecule, which is the first in class, then you have to do a huge research program, already before you even are allowed to go into a human or into an animal. So all the basics, and then of course you have the requirement from the legal side that you have, we have certain phases in the development. You first test it, and when you go to humans, you first test it on a few healthy people because you want to see how the body reacts on when they are healthy, and then you start going into sick patients, first in small numbers, then in big numbers, and think of, if you go, for example, you will test a drug for blood hypertension, then it's not a study about a week or so, it's a long-term study. And in the meantime, the government and the authorities, they don't want to see the short-term benefit. They also want to see what is the long-term benefit. If you take your blood pressure lowering product, what is the benefit about a year or 2 years now? And this all adds up, and then the registration process again is another 1 to 2 years. And the challenge is, I have to, in your country, I have to apply. Additionally, I have a system in Europe for whole Europe. I have one for the US, but when I want to go to your country, I have to do it separately, and this all adds up. So, and then you're easily in 8 to 12 years before it's really on the market. Yeah, so it's a long time, and believe me. So when you went to the industry, many people not, they may only being at the beginning, but never realized the success story, or they are in the end, but never were included in the beginning. So it's a really a rolling kind of development, but it makes it also quite interesting because you're always working on several things in parallel.
Well, what makes me to think again is that, okay, let's say you're talking about 8 to 10 years, right? Because in my case, in engineering, we don't take a very long period of time to commercialize the product. It's because one thing our concern is, let's say now I'm developing a product, I have to be very futuristic thinker because by the time I'm commercializing the product, it has to be in trend at that point of time, right? So in your case, it's 8 to 10 years. How far you have to think, and you, by the time when you actually able to commercialize, it's a need at that point of time, because in your case it's always the need of the humans, right? So how do you actually tackle this kind of issues?
The basic thing also from the very beginning is a pharmaceutical drug. Is it for a human? Is it for an animal? Always has to, as you just said, fulfill a need. So innovation makes no sense for the sake of innovation. So we are not, that's a different thing maybe in university where you try to bring science forward. In the industry, as you know, you need the advanced part. So what can I use out of that? You may develop and improve the things, but finally you need to have it. And of course, we have an approach, for example, now in the animal health area, which we call a disease map. So we have a constant checkup. What is the need for animals in specific areas and for specific diseases? And also, where is a need for, further developing things? Best example, as we unfortunately are all confronted at the moment, is our vaccines. Yeah. So, and this is probably an example, to come back to your question before, where you have seen in record time, in 1.5 years, between idea and people getting vaccinated. However, we have to be aware that all the studies, which I told you, which are necessary from a legal standpoint, were skipped. Because now the whole vaccination program, you could say, is a huge clinical trial. And we learn every day about the outcome. So, but from a normal development, the authorities would never allow that. This was a pandemic. There was an urgent need. And interestingly, first time ever, all different industries, different companies work closely together and were successful. Otherwise, we have competition. Keep in mind, the biggest asset or value we have are our patents. So we have to secure our knowledge, as you do the same in your engineering, through patents, because otherwise, how should we get at a return to continue our research? And this is, and also, and patents even is a very, very time consuming thing when you want to secure it globally. Yeah. So as good as I do. So this is the thing. So there's a lot of things possible. And of course, we have also shorter cycles. For example, when you as a customer tell me, Jürgen, it's very inconvenient to press the tablet out of the blister. And we hear that very often. We may say, okay, let's change the blister foil or something like that. So it's a technical thing, and that can be done, of course, in 1 or 2 years. Yeah. So you have to differentiate between new chemical entities, new active pharmaceutical ingredients, and life cycle management, as you also have. Life cycle management can be quite fast.
Correct, fair enough. So so when you were talking about, let's go to the actual research from the beginning of the ideation up to commercialization. That takes 8 to 10 years. So among this, which phase or which part of the process takes the longest time? Is it the developing part of the research, or finding all this, the ideation part, or getting the approval on the legal side? Which one takes the most time?
Again, let's assume we start with a completely new chemical substance.
Chemical.
Then the longest part is the research phase.
Research, okay.
The phase till you have to create, in particular, also the model, because you need to understand, how is the biochemical part in your body or in the animal's body, and test it again and again. Do the structuring, adaptation, and things like that. And so the longest part is probably always between the idea until the first study in humans. But on the other hand, and then we have, like we have a milestone approach.
Yes.
Where and every milestone is always a go, no-go decision. And just also maybe for the people listening to you, and so you need to know that from all pharmaceutical ideas, only about 10% go into the market in the end.
Wow.
But the investments in between are the same. So just as an idea, the average current investment for a new chemical substance to get into the market, from idea till market, the investment for the industry is about 1 billion euros. 1 billion euros. So, so you can imagine that how often, when I said 10%, how often, hundreds of millions are disappearing without showing up in a product ever. So this is part of the model, and this is also part of the idea why, you need a certain return on your investment to ensure research. So, and that's also part. And when, me as a global project leader, I'm fully accountable, for the outcome on every time, and to report and even make the recommendation. We have, even if it's painful, we have to stop it. Yeah, it doesn't work. It's not safe enough, or it's just much too expensive, or it's impossible to, do the chemical engineering, the chemical development. So there's a lot of things in between, and in this long story. But anyway, you can probably realize it's fun, and I love my work.
I can see that. It's clear enough. But I wanted to ask, do you all have any kind of screening metrics, before you could actually go into anyone investing on your research and everything? I'm sure you have some sort of screening metrics, whether this is really tangible or is it feasible for us to develop and everything, right? You do have this kind of metrics as screening, right?
Yes, and the interesting thing is, with all the artificial intelligence, and what is the future in pharmaceutical research also will be the blockchain methodology, which makes things, you have a much bigger possibility to test theoretically in advance, because of the of all the possibilities the new computers offer you, in a short
Yes.
time. So there's a huge amount of screening all along the value chain we create. And of course, what is also there's still a lot of legal requirements which you cannot skip.
Oh,
But
okay.
also, we as an industry, we are in a constant exchange with the authorities where we can change things in a more, reasonable way. As you know, for example, trying to avoid as many, experiments with animals where possible, and do it in, in a lab, in vitro systems, and really reduces to the absolute minimum what is possible. So there's the last, I would say, 25 years, it's a brutal radical change into less and less, and going into computer simulations, where we need your expertise, and move on. So molecule designing, with the 3D glasses and so on, is at a very early stage always. They can already model the body, or very nicely. Of course, in the end, then it's not just the one molecule, because the challenge starts when you have to put it into a tablet or a liquid or an injectable, because then, a lot of interferences all of a sudden have to be taken into account. So
Okay. That's
there's a lot of
interesting.
screening in between, as you correctly assumed.
Okay. So, what is the challenges now that you face now that working from home? That I presume that most of your work should be on the lab based and all, right? So now that you're working from home, so what kind of challenges you're facing?
So luckily, me, as I mentioned, as a global project manager, I'm honest with you, I could have worked home since always,
Okay.
because my world is a virtual one.
Oh,
I work together, sorry, I work together with a core team, and you could be a core team member, and because you do your work there. And I have colleagues in the US, I have colleagues in France, and colleagues here in Germany. So this is my core teams. We work together and we meet regularly. That's the way we do now, because since 15 months, there's no business trips, so we all stay home. But the people who are working in the lab, really in the lab, my colleagues from the clinic, from the chemical development, they still in the lab. So we have a system, which guarantees they are not in danger. And also, fortunately, in Germany now, these people had a higher prioritization for vaccination. So my
okay.
colleagues, which are working in labs, they are all vaccinated. But still, it's not the full. It's not everyone there. So we have a shift model, so that we have reduced the people same time, just to reduce also the risk. So long story short, for me, it's all good. However, I miss my colleagues. I miss the human touch, the
Sure. We
socializing,
all do.
and having lunch together, and just also sometimes don't talk about your business, about simple things of life.
Yes, it's exactly. So another thing I wanted to ask you about on the collaboration side, right? So while since you're in industry side of doing research, do you by any chance will collaborate with universities to develop the product together by any chance?
As like in chemical engineering, if you think about the life cycles of a new innovation, compared to 100 years ago, it's getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. Your mobile is already an old mobile after a year. So yeah. And when I grew up, computer and handy naive. People cannot even imagine. When I was at university, only at my PhD, I had my first computer. So this is really weird. And now I forgot your question, Misha.
Yeah.
So
I mean, what I was asking is like, your team always collaborates with the university if to develop
yes,
anything.
okay, good point. Yeah, very important point. And because of the shortening of the life cycle management, and faster development, and the biggest asset for a pharmaceutical company, like for an engineering company, is the time to market. When you have an idea, you want to commercialize as soon as possible. So everything is going into, that's when all this Scrum methods and agility and so on is coming into
All the
place, even
tools
with
comes
us,
in.
even for us. So
Okay.
yes, so we simply don't have the capacities internal, to do all the research ourselves. This means the future in the pharmaceutical industry and it's publicly available is startup companies, collaboration with startup companies. They make, and very often startup companies are spin-offs from universities. So you, for example, you are working in the university, and you may have the chance to commercialize your idea. You build up a startup, and you get in contact, either with venture capitalists, or you go directly in contact with the big pharma companies and said, look, this is my idea, what do you think? And this is how we work, and many companies. And then there's either collaborations, but what also very often happened, we just buy them. If the idea is fantastic, we make them an offer, to come into our company and continue working there. So I think the future of universities, and there's still some gaps,
Okay.
is to realize this opportunity early on, and also in the, when we have so many postdocs, and I always say postdocs are a waste of time if it's not directed into the industry from an early on stage. And so, for example, my company, I think we have constantly, alone in Germany, I think we have always 10 to 20 postdocs in our company. So, because we say, okay, we need your special knowledge to move on to the next level, and let's come to us. And then, sometimes they stay with us. Of course, sometimes they went back to university, because of course we need still people who are happy to invent things at university or teach students. So that's a given, yeah. So, but this is a very important topic, and even, in a later stage, we may go back to university because we believe there's a certain knowledge which we don't have. Because keep in mind, with all the chemical part we have talked about, in the end is a huge amount of marketing and sales activities necessary. And so, for example, we will never start an idea and continue with an idea and launch an idea without intensive market research. So this is one of the biggest spends we have is market research, because we need to understand what is Visha in need of. What would she like to have a pencil this way or this way, and because in the end, in particular, if it's not prescription, there's a lot of drugs which you can buy without a prescription. Also in the vet channel, only you go to the pharmacy. We need to understand what is your need and what do you like. And for example, for the whole pharmacy business, do you know who is the main decision maker for buying products in a pharmacy?
Customer? No, the doctors.
No, the woman.
Oh, the women.
80% of buying decision make in the daily life are made by women, by the wife, and so on, because this is a traditional thing. But you can even think about it, maybe change a little bit, because more and more women also work with children. But seriously, a big part of the market research is to understand the female way of thinking, and how do you make a decision, a buying decision thing? What is for you technically important, and what would you say, guys? This is too complicated. I will never buy that again, or something. So it's a lot of things. Also for people in university, when they think in particular of practical, tangible things, is always make a lot of research early on about the usage. Is it really user friendly? Is it something they want to have? Because you know better than I do how many engineering ideas which you would say theoretically fantastic were complete failures because you cannot use them. It was too complicated, and you would never try it a second time. And this is also important for us. The rebuy is more important than the first buy, because the first buy is curiosity, testing something new. But when you are happy and you buy it a second time, then we did a great job.
Oh, that's a very nice one, because it applies in every other industry, every
Of course.
innovation. This is the very first step, customer's point of view, which is so important. If you don't fulfill that, there's no point you're developing anything, right? That's a very good one. Thank you so much for sharing. So, for your business experience, you were saying that you have about 26 years of experience, right? So, what is your advice to the younger generations out there who wants to pursue on your what, nutritional science?
Nutritional science was
Yeah,
my
nutritional science. So, what's your advice on the younger generations out there?
the thing is, maybe an old one, which I think is still valid. First of all, go for what you are excited. Don't check what is in 10 years, what is in 5 years, maybe the biggest need in the market for, yeah? And then say, okay, then I will study X, Y, Z because there's a demand. You will have a hard time, probably not a lot of fun at university because it's not you. So keep in mind, go for what is your desire and what you really strive for. Because in the end, enthusiasm leads to innovation, and innovation leads to attractiveness. Also, that the industry or whoever says, Visha, I love your approach, and I love how you start things. I love how you pursue and give me the impression you know your purpose, because that's also something. Try to find your purpose. What is really the ultimate goal you strive for? Is it a theory? Then you are probably perfectly well at any university. Is it, I want to make the life for people better, easier with my innovations and my ideas? Then you should think of the industry. And another thing which was not so easy when I was at the university, we were not used to that so much, and now much more. Do as much internships as possible. Go
Okay.
into the real life and check out what does it mean to be in a engineering company, in a pharmaceutical company, in a market research company. Go and find out. Don't worry so much about maybe whether they pay you a lot of money for that. Of course, they should. At least I believe internships should not be for free. In my company, they receive a respected money. And also another thing which university people often forget is, do your thesis maybe also together with the industry already. So don't do it, in your closed shop at university. If there's an opportunity to work together, maybe, because very often, the professors, the respective divisions have already established quite some collaborations with the industry. Make use of it, because when I read a CV of someone coming from university, I always make an edit plus if I see they have already tested what real life means. Yeah,
Okay.
because then we have an easy point to talk about, because as I just said in my example, what you really did at university in research maybe is not what your new partner needs. But what I need is to understand that you are able to take an idea, how to work on it, how to move on, how to keep time and budget and so on. And this is obviously often the case when you go into industry. So that is a key advice. Try to be in real life very, very early on.
That's very precisely said. And thank you so much for today's section, Eugene. It's really nice having you in my show, because I really learned a lot today. It's not only the viewers going to learn a lot from this, but it's also me, because I've never really had an opportunity to talk with someone from your industry. And then now that I see, every research comes back to the same. It all comes back to the customer point of view and the market research, the challenges that you face in order to commercialize a product, the processes, like what you said, the legal and everything, all this involvement is really a lot. It's the process, I would say, it's almost similar regardless of the industry. It's just the product, the end of the day, that you're producing, it's different. It fits to
Yeah.
the the industry, but I think the innovation process is the same everywhere. So thank you for enlightening all lovers and for very good advice that you give to younger generations out there. Thank you so much. I hope to have you more. I hope to have you soon in my show again, because we might have some other interesting things to talk about. So
Of
thank you so
course.
much.
I thank you, Visha, for the invitation, and it was fun, just also for your listeners. It was my premiere. I feel very uh, gifted,
Most
by
welcome.
this opportunity you offered me. And the good news is also for others, I can just encourage more people to join your podcast, because it's fun working with Visha. She's really a great personality and so open-minded, and
Thank
and
you.
we never communicated technically, but always from person to person. It was really really great. So thanks for that, and best of success for your podcast. And I look forward to see and talk to you soon again.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Yeah, bye.